Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for more survivalists and continuing with the topic of the war in Ukraine. And the pro-Russian propaganda is really getting out of control in the United States with the left and the right as well. I have here Tucker Carlson, which I've explained in previous videos. He's done a very interesting shift in his narrative. All of a sudden, he's saying the exact same thing that's coming out of the Socialist Party of the United States. This is their statement. They stand by Russia unequivocally, not to war in Ukraine, disband NATO, and ceasefire now. And they have the very long statement about how all of this is NATO's fault, it's the fault of the US, fault of the European Union, basically fault of the West, because if it wasn't for the West, peace-loving Russia would have never been forced to invade Ukraine, which, by the way, it is not a democracy. This is what Tucker Carlson keeps saying even right now. Check it out.
And we oppose that. We should oppose that. But that doesn't mean Ukraine is a democracy. It's not. And we shouldn't tell Americans it is, because that's a lie. We should tell the truth. But virtually no one is telling the truth. Everyone is lying. So why? Why is everyone lying? Why not just say, look, it's outrageous that Russia did this, and we like Ukraine better. We're going to support Ukraine. Fine.
No, not fine. I mean, he's said so many times before he is rooting for Russia, and he's saying that constantly with videos like this, constantly trying to change the narrative instead of looking at the actual real dictator, which is, by all accounts, by all measure possible, Vladimir Putin is a dictator along with his allies. When you look at China, that's a dictatorship as well. You don't have any choice there. If you look at Venezuela, Maduro, if you look at Cuba, all of these are very much aligned with dictators like themselves. It is very interesting that all Tucker Carlson apparently can talk about is trying to throw crap at this guy, which, with all his flaws like every other human being, he's actually one of the few guys in these discussions that actually had a real job for a living until he became president of his own country. But he was an actor, comedian, whatever you want to call it. And before you trash on actors, Ronald Reagan, he was an actor himself, and he wasn't all that much of a bad president, at least the way I see it. I pretty much agree with lots of the things that he did, although I, of course, disagree with many others. But, few people will argue that he was a terrible, bad president for the United States. Right. Now, look at Vladimir Putin, look at Xi, look at Maduro. None of these people had an honest job in their lives. They're all a bunch of dirty commies, which is something that Tucker Carlson would have said himself not that long ago. I know why you're in shock. You haven't seen this yourselves. I've seen it myself over the years many times. I've seen people bought, their opinions bought for a very hefty price, but that's what happens. I've seen it many times already in my own country. And a lot of people fall for that. That's why it works. That's why propaganda works. That's why you don't allow propaganda in times of war. One of the arguments Tucker Carlson is making here is that that Ukraine is not a democracy because they imprisoned the allies of Russia in their own country. Tucker Carlson is not stupid. He understands this as well as I do. When you're at war, you don't let your enemies operate against you in your own countries if you have any choice on the matter. So, when you have the so-called politician opposition in Ukraine, which is pro-Russian, openly pro-Russian, these are traitors to the country, not, a loose-used term, but actual traitors in time of desperate war when you're being bombed to pieces. You don't let those people, those traitors, keep operating against you in your own country in times of war. You either shoot your enemies or, at the very least, you imprison them, which is what they ended up doing with this political party, which is funded, sponsored, and pretty much working for Russia, for Vladimir Putin specifically. Vladimir Putin has operatives all over the world. He's constantly funding distress and dissent and polarized opinions all across the West, especially in things that specifically work towards his interests. For example, all of the eco-friendly bullshit that we've all grown so tired of over the years, a lot of that is very much funded by Vladimir Putin because it really goes towards his own interest of having exports of energy, which is his main income, right? If your nuclear power, if your carbon-based energy, if your own drilling is shut down because of the political backlash due to the environmental groups, that's benefiting Vladimir Putin himself, because that's money straight into his pocket. That's why he finances that sort of stuff, okay? Now, this is all very much common knowledge. You can look it up yourself. You can spend hours and hours looking and researching all of this stuff. Same thing when you talk about gender and how all of this, or violent groups like BLM, again, often funded by Russia. Vladimir Putin funded the Brexit campaign to a great extent. All of those oligarchs in UK, all of those oligarchs in London, very much interested in seeing that come separate from the European Union. Both ways working in terms of you now have a country that's independent from your enemy in terms of the geopolitical situation, and you are weakening your enemy as well by making the European Union smaller, weaker, and having one less member. That's of course benefiting Russia, and yeah, to some extent, some of the elite that want to see a chance of shaping things more, like your Rupert Murdochs or your Barclays brothers, guys that want to have, more freedom in terms of how to deal with their own financial interests at a, broader elite type of level, okay? And if some aspects of that don't align with what other countries want, then that's perfectly fine. But make no mistake, there's very specific interests here at play. It's no accident, it's no coincidence that Tucker Carlson cannot stop talking against Ukraine for 1 second, even though we visibly see, and at times he said it himself, this is wrong. Yeah, it is wrong that Russia is destroying a peaceful nation, of course, but you don't seem to register that, my friend. You just keep on trashing against it. And it is incredible how it comes together. When you look at Alexandra or Sandy Cortez, like Tucker Carlson used to joke about it himself when he said that Sandy Cortez or Alexandria or Alexandra or whatever stupid name she has, what Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez says in terms of Russia, it's very much the same thing. Russian invasion of Ukraine and demands NATO is scrapped. U.S. must end the imperialist expansionism that set the stage for this conflict. AOC, Bernie Sanders, and the rest of the commies all over the world agree with our buddy here, Tucker Carlson. This is all the fault of the United States and its greedy NATO allies that are looking to, expand their territory. That's very, dishonest language, because NATO is not expanding its territory. You have the option of joining NATO or not joining NATO. And like we talked before with Matt Bracken, of course that any country next to Russia would want to be a NATO ally. That's why Ukraine wanted to join NATO themselves. Very strange that it was not allowed to join when it was obviously desperate needed. But it's not expanding its territory. The Soviet Union empire is now expanding its own territory by taking over countries. This is not countries wanting to join Russia. This is not countries wanting to join Putin in some union agreed democratically and peacefully. This is very much violence, bombing, killing, slaughtering civilians, and you being submitted by force to a dictator and his dreams of rebuilding the Soviet empire, even flying the Soviet flag, the red one with a hammer and sickle. They are trying to rebuild the old commie regime, and they're actually kind of successful at it because maybe it works towards the interests of several in the elite, of course, which is part of Vladimir Putin himself. He is definitely one of the richest men in the planet, so it benefits him greatly. And it also benefits waving that flag of potential war, but never actually going for it, never actually doing anything significant, but pretend that this is a potential World War III going on. Like, there's never been nukes before in the face of the earth until this moment. Now is the moment in which we are all suddenly scared of they have nukes. Well, man, a number of countries have had nukes for a few decades now. Have you always taken the political stance of subjugating, resigning any kind of independence and simply surrendering and giving up because they have nukes? I mean, you have nukes of your own. Wasn't that the idea of the mutual destruction deterrent? Like, you have nukes, we have nukes. We basically end up agreeing that we're not going to be using them because if not, we all kill one another. That's always been the theory behind supporting the idea of, yes, that's why you want to have nukes. Both the United States and Russia have more than enough nukes to bomb the entire planet several times over. So that's why you're not using it. But all of a sudden, the stance that's coming out of Tucker Carlson and some elements that are supporting the Russia propaganda is we could not possibly do anything that would potentially upset Vladimir Putin, because if not, he's going to be destroying the entire world. So what's the idea behind that? You just surrender already? I mean, why do you even have nukes to begin with? Don't have any of them if you don't think that's going to be giving you any leverage at all in terms of avoiding potential conflict at such a scale. If you have nukes, they have nukes, and you're just surrendering ahead of time because you're afraid of the other guy using them, that does not go along with a mutual destruction reassurance that you have of we have our own nuclear bombs so as to protect ourselves from the other guy using them. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you are naive, if you fall for the left and this, again, what the Socialist Party of the United States says. Look it up yourself. SocialistPartyUSA.net. This is their stance. The Socialist Party of the United States stands the same one that you see with, their AOC Bernie Sanders and also Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, I like lots of the things she says. I don't like some of the others. The thing I don't like specifically about Tulsi Gabbard is how friendly and cozy she is with commie dictators such as Maduro in Venezuela, who she is unable to call a damn dictator, which is what he is. Same thing with Vladimir Putin in Russia. So you have ideological left-wing fanatics. You have ideological commies and socialists. We've always known this. We've always understood that these people were the exact opposite of our basic core values in terms of freedom and liberty. That's why dictators stick together. Vladimir Putin, Venezuela, Cuba, China, all of these regimes, violent, that are subjugating their own people and trying to subjugate others as well through the use of violence. We've all agreed that this is bad, this is not good, and you should never ally or root with them, right? That's the idea, correct? Now, don't be fooled by all of these people that all of a sudden have a very strange change of heart. I've seen it before, man. I've mentioned it in previous videos. It catches some people by surprise. What? Well, maybe he's right. Maybe he's making sense. No, he's not. He's being bought. And you've never seen that before, at least not on that level, not in your own country, not on the people you've grown used to, the faces on TV, the talking heads that you've seen for over the years. It's very interesting. Having seen that firsthand and experiencing that feeling, it is strange. But don't be tricked into thinking it's anything else than what it is. You have the elements on the left, the woke, the same enemies of freedom and the values we uphold, trying to go after Ukraine, trying to go after Ukraine allies. Here I have this link. This is from Chris Hayes, accuses Poland of racism for accepting Ukrainian refugees, not Syrians. So the woke left is also aligned against Ukraine. It's also aligned in favor of Russia. So it is very strange to see this. Why is it that this guy and many in the woke community are against? Well, because they're accepting Ukrainian refugees. You know why Poland, which, by the way, Poland has been constantly accused of being far-right, fascist, and intolerant against the woke community. You know why Poland and the Polish people are so welcoming to Ukrainians? Because, first of all, they know what Russia is. They have it themselves, and they're themselves worried about one day being invaded by Russia. They've been preparing for years. Of course, being NATO allies, they are in a much better position, but they understand the horror that this is, but also because Ukrainian men are staying behind to fight. Women and children first, those are the ones that are leaving the country and escaping, although many women are in fact staying and doing their part, fighting or supporting the effort in any way possible. But it's not like you have many of these Middle Eastern men, fighting age men that are just going to these countries, specifically looking to take advantage of the systems that allow them to exploit those countries, right? That's a huge difference when your country is not brought down by your own people, a civil war, an internal conflict, and the men you see crossing the border are all between the age of 20 and 40 and just looking around to say, okay, how can I take advantage of this? And of course you have, Syrian refugees, of course you have women, children, families, but you see a lot of people that should be staying there fighting the war going on in their own country, and actually they don't do that. They take the advantage of, okay, what can I get out of this system? Very different situation in Ukraine. People in Ukraine, they don't want to leave their country. They're being forced to do that because they're being bombed to pieces. Very different situation. That's why they're welcomed in such numbers. It's been, million and a half Ukrainians that crossed over. Man, people are even opening their homes up for these people. It's a completely different situation from many of these other refugees, sometimes so-called refugees, sometimes, honestly, people that have seen their cities destroyed. I've actually met people that have been forced out of that place from Syria, and guys that were, a professional. I knew, I think she was a doctor. So you're forced to leave because your country is going through a civil war. Everything is bombed to pieces. But it's not the same thing when you see what's happening in Ukraine to what you see happening in our parts or this idea that they're being discriminated because they're white. No, it's not because they're white. It's because the men are staying to fight, the women and children are looking for safety. And of course, that's a completely different story than when you see a boat full of fighting age men. Completely different scenario. Okay, guys, that's going to be all for now. Prepare for what's coming because I see people so easily fooled by all of this. It just reassures, it just confirms my concerns about people having no idea what's going on. They're so easily tricked. It's hard to understand that, sometimes people are bought. That's how this works. Everyone has their price, and this is just going to be convincing a lot of people that the prices you see going through the roof, it's because of Vladimir Putin, which, he should fry in hell for what he's doing. But the inflation, it's, very, a small percentage would be his fault. The rest is by the same people orchestrating in many ways all of this. That doesn't mean that Ukraine is a country that's being attacked by a violent thug like Vladimir Putin, and the country that is fighting back, you see people like the president of Ukraine. You see people like the Klitschko brothers, famous, successful people, millionaires, smart guys fighting for their country. And you're going to be shitting on that? Really? That's not a democracy? Okay, man, I know where you're standing. I hope you guys realize that as well. Take care. See you on the next video.